So in terms of my predictions last week, I was pretty happy with the margins. It was pretty solid. But running through the winners. Number 1, nailed it. Game 2, nailed it. Game 3, nailed it. Game 4, nailed it. Game 5, nailed it. Game 6, nailed it. Game 7, nailed it. Game 8, failed it. So kicking off this round, we have the Raiders taking on the Bulldogs, starting with the team list of the Raiders. In the backs, they have Jordan Rapinen, Nick Cottridge, Matthew Timoko, Sebastian Chris, Xavier Savage, Ethan Strange, and K.O. Weeks. In the forwards is Josh Papali'i, Danny Levy, Joseph Tarpany, Hudson Young, Elliot Whitehead, and Morgan Smithies. And on the bench is Tom Starling, Atta Moriata, Trey Mooney, and Emre Gula. On the side of the Bulldogs, in the backs, they have Connor Tracy, Jacob Kiraz, Bronson Cherry, Stephen Crichton, Josh Adokar, Matt Burton, Drew Hutchison, and in the forwards is Max King, Reid Marnie, Samuel Hughes, Viliami Kikau, Jamin Salmon, and Kurt Mann. And on the bench for the Bulldogs is Bailey Hayward, Josh Curran, Curtis Morin, and Jacob Preston. So starting with the Raiders, without Jamal Fogarty, it is going to be difficult for them to keep control. Jordan Rapiner isn't the type of fullback to help kind of take over that. Like, you can rely on some fullbacks in the league to help out the kicking game, namely Reece Walsh can take on that responsibility, or Kalen Ponga when he was available. They're the types that could kind of take that role on if needed. But yeah, K.O. Weeks is going to be looked at mostly to take that on. I think he's got a reliable running game. I think he can, he has a good step in him, but to offer the same level of production that Jamal Fogarty did in terms of organisation and control, it's just not going to be the same, unfortunately. But I think the most important thing which they can do is, if they want to get the Bulldogs out of shape, they rely on Papali'i, Levy, and Tarpany. If they can set a strong platform, get those quick play the balls, Danny Levy can then feed off that, find some gaps through the middle, and then keep working with Hudson Young and Elliot Whitehead. They just keep pounding through the middle, and then hopefully they get in the red zone. They get the defensive line of the Bulldogs out of shape. Ethan Strange down that left-hand side can really execute something with his step, because his step is ridiculous. It just kind of floats. Just floats in a different direction. So as the Bulldogs are backtracking, they're pounding through the middle, and then Ethan Strange gets the ball, sees a gap with a player kind of unorganised, only just got back 10 metres. He just goes straight for that player, and then hopefully pick up a few tries off the back of that. On the side of the Bulldogs, I think they're just stronger overall than they were last season. I think, given the deficiencies of the Raiders at the moment, mostly in the halves, I think with the big step up that the Bulldogs have taken this year compared to last, they should be able to withstand what the Raiders can offer, because, as I said, without Jamal Fogarty, it's not going to be as organised. Matt Burton's kicking game is difficult for anybody, even, for a player like Rapiner who's been around the block for a long time. He's going to struggle under the high ball. Drew Hutchison, still getting that game time at 7. I was very unsure about him there at the start of the season, but they like him there. He's grown into that, and they're building as a unit. Jerry and Crichton, they'll be important in the centre roles. Kiraz, reliable finisher, and Josh Adokar will be a key target for kicks and grubbers into that left-hand corner. So he's going to be a tough one to stop. In the forward pack, I still think it's going to go towards the Raiders, but I think mostly that left-hand side with Burton, Crichton, and Adokar, that's going to do it for me. That's going to be their go-to position. But yeah, the forward pack, I think, will lean towards the Raiders. So I think this is going to be a pretty close game. But I think the fact that Fogarty is missing and the Bulldogs have been, maybe not been getting better, but are at least better than they were, and are somewhat reliable this season, I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Seagulls taking on the Broncos, starting with the team list of the Seagulls. In the backs, they have Tolu Kula, Raymond Taumalo Vega, Tommy Tallow, Ruben Garrick, Jackson Barlow, Luke Brooks, and Deli Cherry Evans. In the forwards is Taniela Paseka, Carl Lawton, Josh Alaye, Hamal Olakwatu, Ben and Jake Trebojevic. And on the bench is Gordon Chankum Tong, Corey Waddell, Ethan Bullymore, and Matt Lodge. On the side of the Broncos, they have Reece Walsh, Corey Oates, Katoni Staggs, Selwyn Cobbo, Dean Mariner, Ezra Mam, and Jock Madden. In the forwards is Corey Jensen, Tyson Smoothie, Payne Haas, Brendan Piacora, Jordan Ricky and Patrick Carrigan. And on the bench is Blake Mazer, Xavier Willison, Kobe Hetherington, and Jack Gosevsky. I think, based on just recent performances, the Broncos should be fine in this game. That doesn't mean that I'm writing off the Seagulls completely, because we have seen from time to time this season that they can put up solid points, but they let momentum shift very easily, and they can certainly lose a lead. They know how to do it. They're experts at it. Fair play on that front. The one thing that I think is at least in the Seagulls' favour, because people will instantly be looking at the fact that there's a shuffle in the back line and that there's no Tom Trbojevic, is the Seagulls are so used to this now. Like, seemingly every week last year, they had to change that back line in one way or another. They're probably just used to it. So, in terms of decision making with players in adjusting to slightly different positions, Kula is a reliable fullback, but obviously doesn't play there regularly. With some changes to the back line, decision making will be maybe slightly off. So if you're off against Katoni Staggs and Selwyn Cobbo, they'll destroy you. So they need to be, Vega and Talo especially need to be on point. I trust Garrick and Paulo down the same side, if they are put down the same side. But yeah, that Taumalo, Vega and Talo will be a key target for the Broncos. Reece Walsh, as always, has been quality this season. Ezra Mam has been getting a lot of stick for some reason. He's actually had an incredible year. I think he's well within the conversation for a Queensland spot. I think the only reason why people have been down on Ezra Mam is depending on your opinion regarding the issue with Spencer Leniu. Like, there was a lot of people on Spencer Leniu's side. People are just having a go at Mam about being more of a crybaby than saying he's played poorly. But he's had an excellent year. He really has. Jock Madden obviously doesn't offer the same level of productivity that Adam Reynolds does, but I think is typically fine. Running game, I mean, Adam Reynolds isn't really known for his running game, but I don't think his running game is as good as Reynolds. It's okay, and his kicking game is just not the same. So they will be heavily relying on Walsh and Mam especially. Tyson Smoothie starts as well. So, an opportunity for him, with no Walters, to maybe try and work for that first place, that first spot in the hooker position. In the forward pack, you come up against Payne Haas, you're always going to find it difficult. I think Paseka and Aloye will do well to compete. Olakuatu will do well with helping on field position down the edges, but Piacor and Ricky have been fantastic this season, and Patrick Carrigan through the middle is really developing as a much more mature player as well. He's building his handling, his technical ability, his intelligence in the game, and his carries. He's just building all areas and becoming more mature as he's basically had the armband for most weeks. I think the Broncos will be fine, and I've mentioned it about their injury issues. They've learned to deal with so many players out so far this season, and they've dealt with them well. They've gone past that wave. They'll be fine. They'll be completely fine in this game. So I'm going to go with the Broncos to win 13+. Next up, we have the Titans taking on the Knights, starting with the team list of the Titans. In the backs, they have Keno Kinney, Alafiana Khan-Pereira, Brian Kelly, Aaron Schopp, Jojo Fafita, Chris Randall, Sam Verrills. In the forwards is Moeki Fotuaika, Aaron Clark, Jamin Jolliffe, David Fafita, Bo Fermor, and Cleese Haas. And on the bench is Keenan Palacia, Isaac Liu, Josiah Pahulu, and Joe Stimson. On the team list for the Knights, in the backs, they have David Armstrong, Anari Tuala, Dane Gagai, Bradman Best, Greg Marju, Jack Cogger, and Jackson Hastings. In the forwards is Jacob Saifiti, Jaden Braley, Leo Thompson, Tyson Frizzell, Dylan Lucas, and Adam Elliott. And on the bench is Phoenix Crosland, Kai Pearce-Paul, Brodie Jones, and Jack Hetherington. For me, even given a strong result from the Titans, I just don't think that they would be able to back that up this week. Doesn't mean that they can't, because the Knights are far from perfect. I just think 3 hookers in the spine, I don't think it's going to work out too well. Randall and Verrills, I think they're intelligent enough players, creative enough, can produce some good ruck speed, but I just don't see them controlling this game. I think Jackson Hastings and Cogger together will do a fine job. And Armstrong, since he's come in, I think has done really, really well. Thrown into the deep end and having to live up to the expectations of Kalen Ponga, I don't think people really put that pressure on him. Like, fans certainly didn't. They knew he wasn't going to produce the same way as Ponga, but he probably felt himself that he doesn't want to let the team down. He wants to at least produce at the same level. So for his own expectations, hopefully he's really happy with what he's done, because he's done a good job since he's come in. And I think the fans will be pretty happy with what he's done so far as well. Looking at the forward battle, with Tino unavailable still, like normally when he's in there, I think with him and Fotuaika and Fafita, they do a great job. But you come up against Leo Thompson, who's been pretty solid this season, and Saifiti, who is solid as well, and Frizzell, of course. So I think the forward battle is going to be pretty evenly matched, but the kicking game and overall consistency of those backs for the Knights will be enough. The Knights are still a shaky enough team, and the Titans have done well enough the last couple of weeks for me to go with a 1-12 here, because I would be very surprised if either of these teams manage a 13 plus, but I still feel very confident with the Knights taking this win, so I'm going to go with the Knights to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Sharks taking on the Roosters. Starting with the team list of the Sharks, in the backs they have William Kennedy, Sione Katoa, Jesse Ramian, Kale Ido, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Daniel Atkinson and Nico Hines. In the forwards they have Thomas Hazelton, Blake Brayley, Oregon Kafusi, Britton Nikora, Teague Wilton and Cameron McInnes. And on the bench is Jack Williams, Siasifa Talakai, Royce Hunt and Tuku Hau Tapua. I think, first time saying his name, so bear with me on that one. Looking at the team list of the Roosters now, in the backs they have James Tedesco, Daniel Tupou, Joseph Suwali, Fetalega Pauga, Dominic Young, Luke Keary and Sam Walker. In the forwards is Jared Warrior-Hargreaves, Brandon Smith, Lindsay Collins, Angus Crichton, Nat Butcher and Victor Radley. And on the bench is Connor Watson, Egan Butcher, Spencer Leniu and Terrell May. So a few things to point out. Number one, Pauga starting for the Roosters. He's going to be a key target for the Sharks to go at. They're going to try and put him under as much pressure as possible. Given his limited experience this season, is going to be potentially really rusty, so he's going to be their go-to. You don't want to be attacking Tupou and Suwali the whole game, because they'll soak up a lot of pressure. They're great at that. Daniel Atkinson, since he's come in replacing Braden Trindle, I think has done a really solid job. I hope his leg's okay. But yeah, he's done a pretty fine job as well. Nico Hines has been quality this season as well. He's either top or second in the Dally M race at the moment. Not too sure. The players on the edges like Nikora, Wilton, Ramian, Iro, I think they'll be extremely important in getting that field position battle and really shutting down a lot what the Roosters will try and do, because they've been spreading the ball more and well. They've been executing really well. So on both sides of the ball, defensively and in attack, the players on the edges for the Sharks will be so important. I think, given the aerial threat that Katoa and Mulatalo pose, you couldn't find two better wingers to deal with that threat than Dominic Young with his height and Daniel Tupou with his height and experience. So in terms of chip kicks to the corner, unless players are out of position, which there has been times where the Roosters have kind of tucked in a bit too much and there's just a winger isolated and they're getting beat like 2-on-1 because a player, all they need to do is smack the ball down rather than get a clean grab on that ball. So the Roosters can get caught out of position in that sense. But if they've got everyone locked into position, focusing on their one-to-ones, I think Tupou and Young should be able to soak up a lot of that. So it's the grubber kicks in behind. I think they can get caught out a little bit, so that'll be the main focus for me on the Sharks. But I think Keary's playing with a lot of freedom and Sam Walker's playing with a lot more freedom. Angus Crichton, since he's come back in, has been fantastic on those edges as well. Victor Radley's always solid through the middle, and Brandon Smith is really starting to click now the last couple of weeks with the Roosters. There was a bit of a peak last year. People questioned him a lot in this system, but he's really starting to find his feet, and as a unit, they're just really flying. The Sharks are a reliable team, but I just think at the moment there'll be... It doesn't mean they can't win it, but I think there'll be a lot of pressure that they'll have to soak up from the Roosters. They'll get a lot of repeat sets with their short-range kicking game. I think the Sharks will do well to manage that pressure, but I think the Roosters overall just are really firing at the moment and will just be a little bit too much over the course of 80 minutes. So I'm going to go with the Roosters to win, 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Rabbitohs taking on the Cowboys, starting with the team list of the Rabbitohs. In the backs, they have Latrell Mitchell, Alex Johnston, Jack Whiten, Isaac Tuatupo-Thompson, Jacob Gagai, Cody Walker, and Dion Taupa. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've not heard it said before. In the forwards is David Moale, Damien Cook, Sean Kepi, Kian Kalamatangi, Jai Arrow, and, Saliva Havili. On the bench is Peter Mamazalis, Talis Duncan, Thomas Burgess, and Tane Milne. On the side of the Cowboys, in the backs, they have Scott Drinkwater, Cal Felt, Valentine Holmes, Viliami Vailea, and Murray Talangi, Tom Dearden, and Chad Townsend. In the forwards is Jordan McLean, Reece Robson, Griffin Neame, Helam Lukey, Jeremiah Nanai, and Ruben Cotter. And on the bench is Sam McIntyre, Thomas McKaylee, Kelikefu Finifeyuaki, got it, and Jason Taumalolo. We got there. The Cowboys, man. What are you doing to me? Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? Stop it. So, I backed them and they failed it. Just completely failed it. So, looking at the performance from the Rabbitohs against the Dragons, obviously, I leant towards the Dragons 13+. So I had my expectations. I did like the Rabbitohs' energy, and I think they've brought a decent amount of energy the last couple of weeks. Some teams, they can bring energy, but not much else. I think there's a somewhat decent level of productivity that the Rabbitohs are bringing. It's still not great defensively. There are holes there. In attack, it's still not clean. But I still trust the Rabbitohs with their energy at the moment to at least wear teams down at times, produce their own momentum, and put up points. And I think given the shakiness of this Cowboys team at the moment, they will find ways to do that, and they'll actually make this a fairly competitive game. I always look at the forward pack of the Cowboys and think that they can dominate anybody. McLean, Neame, Lukey, Nanai, Cotter, and then from the bench, McKaylee, Finifeyuaki, and Taumalolo is ridiculous. But on the back of that, I just don't think the production from Dearden and Drinkwater has been at the same level that I had them at last year, and probably even the year before that as well. Having Taulangi back in there is going to be helpful for the productivity and coming out the backfield. But I just think, given the deficiencies of the Rabbitohs, the Cowboys should be fine in this game because they're still a strong team, but they have issues on both sides of the ball. I think the Cowboys, this will just be one where the Rabbitohs just aren't good enough and the Cowboys are okay. I think it'll be that simple. It'll just be a slugfest through the middle. They'll complete a lot of sets, but there'll still be errors in there. But overall, the Cowboys will just execute on more occasions than the Rabbitohs because they're just a better team. I think it's just one of those pretty standard NRL games coming from these two teams. So, with that being said, I'm going to go with the Cowboys to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Warriors taking on the Panthers, starting with the team list of the Warriors. In the backs, they have Tane Tauapiki, Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, Ali Leitaua, you'll have to forgive me on that one, Adam Pompey, Marcelo Montoya, Chance Nickel-Klokstad, and Tamari Martin. In the forwards is Adam Fanua-Blake, Wade Egan, Bunty Afoa, Jackson Ford, Mitch Barnett, and Tory Harris. And on the bench is Dylan Walker, Tom Arley, Jazz Tavanga, and Jacob Laban. On the side of the Panthers, in the backs, they have Dylan Edwards, Sonia Taruva, Isaac Tango, Taylor May, Brian Toto, Jack Cole, and Jerome Luai. In the forwards is Moses Liotta, Mitch Kenny, James Fisher-Harris, Luke Garner, Liam Martin, and Isaiah Yeo. And on the bench is Dane Laurie, Lindsay Smith, Matt Eisenhuth, and Maverick Gaia. I possibly, before seeing the team list, would have gone 13 plus for the Panthers, but there's a reason why I think 1 to 12 is possible, but possibly the high end of the 1 to 12. First of all, people will look at this and right off the bat say, look, the Panthers will demolish them, which is completely understandable. Completely understandable. With players playing out of position, Nickel-Klokstad at 6, I don't want to completely write that off as like a problem because his running game can be very effective. So we'll have to see how that translates. Tamari Martin taking on the kicking game. we'll have to see how that translates. I think with this one, it's difficult to be unpredictable in the NRL, but I think with the individuals that the Warriors have got and in the positions that they're in, I think we'll do a good job to be unpredictable. Now, in the back line, having Laitua, however you pronounce it, is probably going to be a key target for the Panthers. But with Montoya, Pompey and Watene-Zelezniak in key positions, their decision-making, knowing how to jam and when to jam out the line, should be okay for the most part. But Taupiki at fullback will probably face a few issues. The Panthers were not really on it, if I'm honest, against the Bulldogs. Even with Cleary in there for the majority of the game. Jack Cole, what he can produce, we'll have to see. My biggest issue is that the Panthers will be very, very one-dimensional. So there are still a few individuals on the side of the Panthers that can make this interesting, because the two players that I think are going to cause the most issues playing off the cuff will be Dylan Edwards and Isaiah Yeo. Isaiah Yeo is the perfect blend between carrying and like ball handling and technical ability. He's just an incredible all-round player. If the Warriors shut him down, then there's only Dylan Edwards to worry about. If they shut down Dylan Edwards, there's only Isaiah Yeo to worry about. If they shut them both down, I don't think Cole or Luai offer much. I still think the Panthers will be the stronger team here, but I don't think it'll be an astronomical scoreline if they can shut down at least Edwards or Yeo, because Jack Cole is going to be inexperienced this season, and if they can put him under a lot of pressure, cause him to make bad decisions, they can really get into him and get him out of the game completely. Jerome Luai is so prone to just switching back in. It's becoming pretty predictable that he doesn't really take on the line as much. He just shifts back to the inside. And if he's going to be doing that all game, he's going to offer absolutely nothing like he did against the Rabbitohs. I still think, based on the overall structure of the Panthers, they will produce more than the Warriors because they have been poor, defensively especially the Warriors. So I think the Panthers will be fine. But based on, I think, the one-dimensionality, if that's even a word, of the Panthers, and I guess the chaos that the Warriors can throw up there, will cause the game to be a little bit closer. So, in the hopes that that makes sense to anybody, I'm going to go with the Panthers to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Storm taking on the Eels, starting with the team list of the Storm. In the backs, they have Suafai Logo, Will Warbrick, Remus Smith, Nick Meaney, Xavier Coates, Cameron Munster, and Tyron Wishart. In the forwards is Christian Welch, Harry Grant, Josh King, Sean Bloor, Eliezer Katoa, and Trent Liero. And on the bench is Jack Howarth, Tui Kamakimitha, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, and Alec McDonald. On the side of the Eels is Blaise Talangi, Micah Sivo, Will Penasini, Sean Russell, Bailey Simonson, Dejon Assey, and Dylan Brown. In the forwards is Regan Campbell-Gillard, Joey Lussick, Junior Barlow, Sean Lane, Ryan Matheson, and Jermaine Hopgood. And on the bench is Bryce Cartwright, Makahesi Makatoa, Joe Afa-Ingawi, and Kelma Tulangi. Melbourne Storm put in a fantastic effort against the Sharks last week. Two, monsters coming up against each other and, take the sin bin out the game. Who knows? But I don't want to focus on that too much because it's already been banged on about the last couple of days anyway. I think not having Jerome Luai in there is going to continue to be an issue. However, I really like what Tyron Wishart has produced this season. A lot of games so far he's been brought on in the 13 role just to add just a bit more pace and a bit more technical ability. So they've gone away from trying to pound teams through the middle, especially towards the back end of games when they've been under the crunch and had to produce something. They brought on Tyron Wishart and he's really helped to pick up the pace in the middle of the park and produce some good moments against the Sharks as well. So also a good thing, he is probably going to be the number 7 for the future unless they look elsewhere. But to get more game time whilst there's no Jerome Hughes in there is really important. So he's going to be that number 7 for the future, and I think he's producing at a really high level. Cameron Munster has been improving. I think his first few weeks coming back in weren't particularly great, but has been improving week to week to week. Falogo gets another week at fullback, more time to learn and improve. That will only help Melbourne Storm as they go, and the rest of the players in that back line with Warbrick, Smith, Meaney and Coates, solid enough defensively, and you can probably bet your backside that there's a Xavier Coates try in there at some point. Blaise Talangi will be targeted a lot. Cameron Munster's going to make sure that he's pinned back into the corners, and they're going to try and push the Eels back, so they'll find it difficult to push out the back line. You can get some good carries in there from Simonson and Mike Acevo, but I think Melbourne Storm will shut them down a lot. There are still some defensive deficiencies for me on the side of Melbourne Storm, and the Eels seem to just put up points fairly consistently, quite well. So I'm thinking more of a 1-12 margin here. I think Melbourne Storm could absolutely demolish the Eels here, but I think Jerome Hughes will be an issue, but Tyrone Wishart will still have a decent game. Even if Jonah Pizzette was in there, who I think did a really great job the first few weeks, Melbourne Storm still would be fine in this game. I can't see the Eels winning it unless there's maybe multiple sin bins or a red card. But on a typical game, Melbourne Storm should be fine. But I think defensively, that will cause it to be 1-12. So I'm going to go with the Storm to win 1-12 points. Finally, for this round, we have the Tigers taking on the Dolphins, starting with the team list of the Tigers. In the backs, they have Jareen Bula, Charlie Staines, Brent Naden, Justin Olam, Solomon Ayamalo, Lachlan Galvin and Jaden Sullivan. In the forwards is Stefano Utokumanu, Api Coruscant, David Clemmer, Samuel Afenu, Alex Seyfarth and Alex Twoll. And on the bench is Jake Simpkin, Fanua Pale, Asu Kepoa and Sione Fenu. Apologies there. The team list for the Dolphins includes Hamaso Tabai-Fidel, Jermaine Asako, Jake Avarillo, Herbie Farnworth, Jack Bostock, Cody Nikarima and Isaiah Katoa. In the forwards is Jesse Bromwich, Jeremy Marshall-King, Mark Nichols, Felice Kafusi, Ewan Aitken and Kenneth Bromwich. And on the bench is Josh Kurt Donahue, Ray Stone and Connolly Lemuelu. So, one of the, unfortunate things is that Fuller isn't still here in the team, because I think he's been doing a great job. And it was always kind of understood that Tabai-Fidel would come back in at some point and reclaim that number 1 spot. But fair play to Fuller for what he's done so far this season. But with Tabai-Fidel back in there, fitness hopefully at full, he's going to be an absolute pain in the arse for the Tigers. And I always look at the same 2 players for the Dolphins every single week. Feel free to have a guess, but they go by the name of Jake Avarillo and Herbie Farnworth. I think they are ultimately on paper, maybe not always in production, but on paper, the 2 most important players in that team, because of what Avarillo did for the Bulldogs, because they were poor last season, but when he was attacking those edges, he made the Bulldogs look insane. Herbie Farnworth, obviously the Broncos had a bunch of top level players around him as well, but he could produce moments on his own as well. So they're always 2 that I look at. And with reliable players like Jermaine Asako and Bostock, who's having a really good year so far, I think the production from this back line of the Dolphins will be insane. Absolutely insane. I'm going with a big scoreline here, by the way. The forward battle, I think, will be mostly even. And 2 very intelligent hookers in Coruscant and Marshall King. I think they'll do a lot of good picking up the speed through the middle. I think it'll be a very fast game through the middle, but I think the Dolphins will be able to deal with that, and it will be a huge bonus for the Dolphins. Getting Nikarima and Katoa on the back of it. Katoa's had even more improved performances recently. Got there eventually. Been doing better. He's only 20, but he's still improving. Still a lot to learn. Cody Nikarima is very reliable, and then you get Tabai-Fidel attacking the edges on the back of quick play the balls. Mate, I don't know if the Tigers can really slow that down. So I can see an absolute bloodbath here. I don't typically go for high-scoring games. I mean, maybe between the 2 teams put together, but it's not that often I go for one team battering another. But for this round, I'm just going to go with the Dolphins to win 13+. And yes, by that scoreline. So to recap my predictions for this round, I'm going to take the Bulldogs 1 to 12 points, Broncos 13+, Knights, Roosters, Cowboys, Panthers, Storm 1 to 12 points, and the Dolphins 13+. In terms of winners' confidence, I'm at about 85%. Most of these I'm pretty sure about, such as the Broncos, Knights, Cowboys, Panthers, Storm, and Dolphins. I think the Raiders could maybe throw up a challenge against the Bulldogs. The Titans might actually make it tricky against the Knights, and of course the Sharks could easily beat the Roosters. In terms of margin confidence, I'm at about 80%. Some of these I'm not too sure about. Sea Eagles might make it close against the Broncos. Obviously the Sharks could beat the Roosters, that throws that in contention as well. The Panthers could demolish the Warriors given their performances as well. Storm could demolish the Eels. So it's a bit all over the place. I'm not too confident on both sides, but a lot of the winners, in terms of winners that I'm really confident with, Broncos, Knights, Cowboys, Panthers, Storm, Dolphins. Those 6 I'm really confident in winning. Margins, not so much. So that's going to be it for my NRL Round 11 predictions. If you have your own, do let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know how you got on last week. But that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.